Sports fans and YouTube viewers, this is Image returning with set 2 of CJ versus Estro, played in the Pro League on the 30th of May. As you might have seen from the last game, Estro is currently leading this set 1-0 after UpMagic beat Quanro, and we're heading into set 2, again with a very brief introduction. I think the players are already in their booths and getting ready. And on the left is Much, a Protoss player for CJ Entus. He's incidentally a favorite player of mine, if not my favorite player. And on the right is Hyvaa, a Zerg player for Estro, who, as I'd mentioned earlier, has been finding himself increasingly in the role of Estro's ace player. Hyvaa's been on a bit of a tear recently, and Much has been playing really inconsistently lately. I'd say over the last year or so. Yet, hold that thought, we're starting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and off we go. Like I was saying, Much has been playing kind of inconsistently in the last little while. He was playing pretty impressively a couple of OSLs ago. He had a game against Zerg that was absolutely brilliant. It had seemed to me that Much was just playing incredibly aggressively, and July couldn't keep up. The sort of analogy of it that I'd come up with was that July had come prepared to play a game of StarCraft, and Much had come prepared for a knife fight and just happened to be playing StarCraft that day. So, game's begun. Hyvaa sent his Overlord up in the incorrect direction. The map we're on, by the way, is Shades of Twilight. It's a new map. It's just made its debut for this round of Pro League, and not a whole lot of action's been seen on it yet, so it'll be really interesting to see what the map brings us today. By the way, Much is in yellow. He's at the 10 o'clock position, and Hyvaa is in teal, I believe, at the 4. So Much has set up his pylon over by his natural expansion. It looks like he's going to be going for a Forge Fast Expand build. On the other side of the map, Hyvaa has just planted a 12 hatchery, which Much's scouting probe is quickly approaching. So Much at this point could probably get away with, or, well, no probably about it, he can go and plant his Nexus before throwing down any cannons. And now the spawning pool is on the way up for Hyvaa as Much as Forge completes. And it looks like he's about to plant that Nexus down. He hasn't got that probe over near to the pylon to throw up either a gateway, which is also an option, but the Nexus first would be better for the economic game that it looks like Much is inclined to play. So Nexus first, still no cannons yet, and given that 12 hatch and later pool, it wouldn't be all that surprising at all to see Much throw down a gateway first, especially with the spawning pool not even completed. On the other side of the map, Hyvaa, in response to this, is getting his own economy in order. He's throwing down a 3rd hatchery at the 6 o'clock position. And so early on it looks like we're going to be getting into a macro game. And as we sort of wait for the players to commit to their tech and all of that, I'll talk a little bit more about Much's inconsistent play. So after he had that really brilliant game with July in the OSL a couple of seasons ago, he sort of was slumping since then. He took quite a lot of losses in the Pro League to worse players. He had taken particularly one really brutal loss that I saw on one of the other commentators' accounts to Moomyang, and Moomyang's not a terrible player in my opinion, and I think the SKT1 team agrees now that he is, excuse me, now that Moomyang is their Zerg coach. But there's a pretty large and vocal group of pro StarCraft fans in the community who happen to hold the opinion and make a decent argument for the case that Moomyang kind of sucks. Lair now going up for Hyvaa, and so it looks like we're going to see probably that increasingly standard 3-hatchery Spire into 5-hatch Hydralisks build that's that definitely gives the Zerg at least a fair chance against the forge fast expanding antics of the Protoss. So much took a loss to Moomyang and a number of other pretty disappointing losses, and he didn't see a whole lot of play because CJ Entus has been throwing a lot of responsibility onto the shoulders of their new, young, up-and-coming players. Like, for example, Savior hasn't been playing a lot because they've been putting a lot of faith and a lot of effort into developing efforts play on the Zerg side. The same can be said of Iris, although he got a lot more play in the previous couple of rounds of Pro League, being to some degree supplanted by the new young player Skyhigh. And on the Protoss side, Much has been also playing a lot less. He's been getting sort of, I wouldn't say gradually replaced, but he's not being used as much so that CJ Entus can develop by movie. So Much has got his door set up. He's still only got one cannon there, and he is gating up and getting some Templar Archives. So he's got his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th gateways going up and the Archives, and so at this point it'll be interesting to see whether he decides to go for a Speedlot Archon rush or just a sort of more standard macro, sort of late game oriented build. So while Much hadn't been playing very much, he did make a few appearances in the last couple of rounds of Pro League, and he did pretty well. He scored a 3-kill during the Winners League, which was pretty neat, and quite recently in the Pro League he took a really intense game off of Flash, who is a fantastic player, and I hope anyway that this heralds a big return to form for Much, but I think it's still a little bit too early to call. I, for one, however, would be really happy to see Much playing well and consistently and being used. I know as well there's been some conjecture in the community that Much has been seeing less play because he's going to be enlisting in the Air Force soon, and it seems plausible enough to me, but I just couldn't comment either way. So Archons are getting morphed, and I would have been surprised to see that, but now I see the Forge is spinning, so presumably that's going to indicate that there's going to be a Speedlot Archon rush coming, and I think that would be about the only reason that we would see those Archons, because if they'd be useful if Hyvaa was going Mutalisks, but it doesn't seem that's what he's using his Spire Forge to pop down some Scourge before the Hydralisks come. But as I also noticed, it looks like Hyvaa has foregone the early Hydralisks and he's gone straight to Lurkers, taking advantage of the fact that, so far at least, Much hasn't planted a robotics facility anywhere. And those Lurkers are going to force the pylon that was going up at Much's 3rd base to cancel, and it's going to delay that. But in fact, the robotics facility is already up and the observatory is on the way, so while Hyvaa's going to get a few free shots in with these Lurkers, pretty soon an observer is going to be out, and it'll be a matter of whether Much can break this this early but weaker for the fact of there being fewer Lurkers contain. So it looks like that's the tone that this early game is going to take. Containment versus well, a macro breakout strategy. Queen